Hello everybody, Mrs. Seals here. I'm going to show you how to paint your watercolor color wheel. Okay, so you're going to need your color wheel. You should have already made that in your sketchbook. And then you're going to need your watercolor paint set and a cup of water. And then your paintbrushes. Alright, so we're going to start by painting the primary colors, which are red, yellow, and blue. You can use either brush, either one would work. The smaller one might work to get more precise within the circle. So to start out, you do need to get all of your paints wet because that is how watercolor paint works. So I'm actually going to use a larger brush to do this. We're not going to use brown or black today, so I'm not going to add any water to those two colors. So what I'm going to do is dip my brush in the water, pick some up, and then squeeze or just kind of drop a few drops into each color, just to kind of help activate them and get them ready to go. Not a whole lot of water though, because you don't want to make it soupy in there. Alright, so for this we are not going to mix our secondary colors. We're going to just use the colors that are already provided for us in the watercolor set, but we are going to mix our own tertiary colors, which is a combination of the primary and secondary colors. Okay, so to start out, I'm going to use that smaller paintbrush, and I'm going to paint my primary colors. So you want it to be fairly wet, and then you'll just get that red paint and start painting the red circle. Now with watercolor paint, it is meant to build up layers. So really, ideally you want the first layer to dry and then go back in and add another layer. Now we're not using actual watercolor paper, so your paper is going to be thinner and it won't be able to take very many layers of paint. So one good solid layer should be just fine. Okay, so once you're done painting the red one, rinse your brush off and do yellow. Okay, and then rinse that brush. Make sure you always rinse your brush before you go to a new color. You don't ever want to mix the colors in that palette there. That's what the lid is for. Okay, so we've done our primary colors. Now we're going to move on to the secondary colors. So I'm going to do orange next. Again, you don't need to mix these. We'll just use what has already been provided. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush, move on to green. And lastly, purple. Be careful when you're painting. Like I need to be careful of this right side here, not to let my hand run over that. And purple is really dark, especially the purple in the paint set. So you might find that you don't want to use as much paint because you want it to still show the color. And if it's too dark, you're not going to really be able to see that. So, all right. Now, if you want to go back in and do any second layers, maybe that yellow could use another layer, you could do that. My water is looking pretty dirty, so I'm going to go get some new water. All right, so now we are going to paint our tertiary colors, which are a combination of the primary and secondary color. So for example, we have red and we have orange. Red is our primary, orange is our secondary. Combine those together and we have our tertiary, which is red-orange. So we're going to be mixing all of these colors ourselves. Okay, so that is where you will use that lid. You don't ever want to mix your colors in the palette. You don't want to mix it on your paper. You want to mix it in the lid. Okay, so your paints should be wet. Remember, we have added water to our paints. If you did that yesterday, it will have dried. So you'll want to re-add that water. All right, so I'm going to start by mixing my red-orange. Now, red and orange are pretty similar in darkness, so it's going to be pretty half and half. So I'm going to get some water on my brush. Then I'm going to get some red paint on my brush. And then in my lid, I'm going to just try to transfer some of that paint. We don't need a whole lot because we're just painting that little circle. Okay, so I got some red paint in my brush. Now I'm going to get some orange paint, and I'm going to use my other brush. That way I don't have to get any color inside another color on my palette here. I'm going to pick up some of the orange paint, and I'm going to put it near that red. I'm not touching that red so that I'm not getting it into my orange. Try to get the same amount for each one. Okay, so now I'm just going to use that brush and I'm going to mix them together. And you should have a good red-orange. Now, after you mix it and you say, oh, maybe you feel like you went a little overboard with the orange or the red, that's fine. Just rinse your brush, get more of whatever color you need, and mix it in there. I think mine's pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and paint my circle. It should be a good mix, pretty half and half of red and orange. Okay, so I'm going to rinse my brushes. Now your water is going to get pretty dirty pretty quickly, so we might need to get new water once or twice during this time. All right, next we're going to do yellow-orange. Now yellow is much lighter than orange, so we're going to have more yellow, less orange. So we're going to always start with the lighter color when it goes to mixing because you're going to want more of that, so it's just much easier to add the dark to the light. So we're going to start with our yellow. Get a good amount of yellow in there. I'm using the larger brush for the yellow. Okay, then I'm going to use my smaller brush. Just get a little bit of green, and I'm going to go ahead and just mix it in there. Let's see how that comes out. See, that's pretty good right there. And that did not take very much green at all, just one little dip. Oh, and I'm sorry, I just realized I forgot orange yellow. We will go back and do orange yellow. Okay, so I'm going to paint in my yellow green. And it's the same thing for orange yellow. You're going to have more yellow than orange. That's the one I was talking about, and then I started mixing green. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so now I've got my yellow green. So now we will do yellow-orange. So same thing, we're going to start with our yellow. I'm going to use my bigger brush, put that in the lid, and then use my smaller brush and just get one little dab of orange, mix that in, and I'd say that's pretty good. I might actually add just a little bit more yellow. I think that orange might have been a little too overpowering. Okay, mix those. Here we go. All right. And then I will paint my orange yellow. All right, I'm going to get some new water real quickly. Mine is quite dirty. You don't want to be using dirty water because it will start to muddy up your colors. So I would say once you've done about half, go ahead and get clean water. All right, next we're going to do green-blue. I would say blue is a little bit darker than green, so we're going to start with green and add just a little bit of blue to it. So get my green here. And you're going to have to add more. Ooh, I think I got a lot on my brush there. You will need more blue. I mean, a decent amount of blue. So you kind of want this good middle color. Kind of a greenish, bluish. Let's see. Yeah, that's good. All right. Next is blue-purple. I would say the purple is probably a little bit more overpowering than the blue, but they're both fairly dark. But I'm going to start with my purple since that one is a little bit of the darker one. Or I'm sorry, what am I saying? You should be starting with your blue. The blue is the lighter one, so you should be starting with that. So I'm going to put my blue over here, and then I'm just going to grab some of this purple that I already put down and mix it in. Okay, so I finished painting my blue-purple. The last color I'm going to do is purple-red, combining my red and my purple. So my purple is much more dark than my red, so we're going to start with the red paint and add just a little bit of purple to that. So I'm going to use my larger brush, and I'm going to get my red. Okay, and then I'm going to use the smaller brush to get just a little bit of purple. Purple is very dark. Ooh, I think I still got too much. So I'm going to clean my brush again, go back and get some more red. Okay, and then mix in, I'm not even going to mix in that whole thing that I created. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see. There we go. That purple is super strong. It doesn't take much for it to overpower. All right. And there we go. We have created our color wheel with our primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. One last thing you'll want to do is clean out your water cup and your brushes. And then also you'll want to clean these paints out of that lid. So you could either run it under water, but just be careful not to let the water get on your paints here, or use a wet paper towel and just wipe those out. That's probably what I would suggest doing, and I would do that now before they dry, because once it dries in there, it's going to be much more challenging to get those out. And then you might want to leave your palette open overnight just so those paints can dry out, and they will be ready for you to use the next time.